And as you can see, DHS's IT budget has plateaued at around $5.8 billion, and we expect this amount to remain fairly constant. Customs and Border Protection is the largest DHS subcomponent, receiving about a quarter of the department's IT budget. We are going to go into a little more detail about CBP in a few slides. Now, the DHS section of this circle chart is comprised of headquarters activities. So that's things like running the department's enterprise data centers and other entities like the Directorate of Science and Technology and the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. Now, unfortunately, we're not going to have time to discuss all these components, but we will be doing a webinar on DHS in January, so keep your eyes peeled for that.
Here are the top contractors and the top contract vehicles at DHS, and obviously, most of these top contractors are on EAGLE, which, as you can see, is by far the largest vehicle that DHS makes use of. EAGLE is a services contract, but it's really systems development, and what that means is there's a lot of opportunity for you to sell COTS products directly to those contractors. CSC, the top vendor here, manages DC-1 down at Stennis. IBM handles a lot of CBP application modernization and so on. The takeaway here is take the time, do a little bit of research to determine which EAGLE prime will have need for your technology and form the proper relationships there, because there will be requirements for almost every type of product across DHS this year.
So first and foremost, cybersecurity is a major technology at DHS, and some might argue it is the major technology at DHS. And that's really because the department is charged with not only the protection of the federal civilian networks, but also the nation's critical infrastructure. Now, this fiscal year, DHS is spending $1.25 billion of its budget on cybersecurity, and in reality, that number is much higher due to security technology that's baked into systems design and development. And that is a critical component of the modern technology stack. Think back to the shield graphic that we showed you at the beginning of this presentation. Now, that money is spent on a variety of different programs like Einstein, CDM, and US CERT, and also on cybersecurity research. And it's on that last that I'd like to tell you about an interesting little group called Transition to Practice. What they do is they focus on productizing the cybersecurity research done at FFRDCs and leasing it back to the private sector so that this cybersecurity R&D can actually become a usable cyber product that you can sell. Big data and analytics is also another major trend at DHS, and I do want to highlight a few opportunities here. Now, TSA is going to be very interested in analytics to screen passengers entering and exiting the country, hopefully to speed up wait times at airports. Work along the southwest border is a key driver of DHS technology purchasing and expect it to be of larger focus going forward. The demand for technologies at the border includes surveillance and the data that's generated there, although keep in mind there is also a mobility play so that Border Patrol agents can actually analyze the data as it's coming in real time. And lastly, there were a number of big data initiatives like Management Cube at the headquarters level that seem to have stalled due to transitions in leadership at DHS. You could have some real opportunities by having high-level conversations at DHS, but your better opportunity is probably going to lie within the subcomponents. And last but not least, let us talk about DHS infrastructure. We are going to see a couple of major RFPs hit the streets in the coming months, including recompetes of the enterprise data center contracts, network and security operation centers. And while these contracts are going to be awarded to systems integrators, you are going to have significant opportunity selling to those contractors when they take over operations. Now, headquarters construction has also been awarded at St. Elizabeth's, and you'll certainly have opportunities there if you are an infrastructure vendor to sell. And last but not least, as still a significant driver at DHS is the cost of its legacy systems. Maintenance costs are increasing. And while DHS has a bit more flexibility because they are a larger overall IT budget, they're still being challenged by rising costs and declining performance. Now, here's an overall snapshot of DHS. Jay Johnson does remain secretary, although his top-level leadership team has changed a bit in the past year. Now, Alejandro Mayorkas became deputy secretary in December of 2013, and he actually came from USCIS, so at least he's familiar with the department. Chris Kaminsky is currently the acting Undersecretary for Management. He's actually been doing that since Raphael Boris left in February of this year. Russell Deo is currently the President's nominee for this role, although it does remain to be seen whether or not the Senate will confirm him. Now, Luke McCormick sits within the Undersecretary for Management shop. He's the DHS CIO, and his office is really going to be involved with those pretty significant DHS infrastructure RFPs that I talked about on the last slide. Now, for a few of the agencies that we're not going to have time to talk about today, there have also been leadership changes at ICE, USCIS, Coast Guard, and Secret Service. And I do want to note here that you're probably wondering why there's a big red box at the bottom of the screen. That's because you can sell almost any type of IT to any one of those organizations down there. They have broad demands across the board, and hopefully we'll highlight a few of them.
Next up, we have NPPD's Office of Cybersecurity and Communications. Andy Osmond is the Assistant Secretary here, and his group is responsible for overseeing national cybersecurity efforts. We've highlighted 3 offices on the screen here that are key. The first is the National Cybersecurity and Communications Integration Center, or NCIC, which is led by Greg Tohill. The NCIC is a Cyber Situational Awareness Management Center, and it's tantamount to a national nexus of cyber and communications integration for the federal government. The U.S. Computer Emergency Readiness Team, better known as U.S. CERT, also rolls up to the NCIC, although it is worth noting that there's some shared responsibility there with our next office, Federal Network Resilience, led by John Stroifert. Stroifert also manages the Continuous Diagnostics and Mitigation, or CDM program, and we will get into some more detail on that later. He recently lost his deputy, Danny Toller, who replaces Brendan Good as the Director of the Network Security Deployment Division. We'll talk a little bit more about what that group is doing in a few slides when we address the Einstein program.
And let's take a look at the largest DHS subcomponent by IT budget, Customs and Border Protection. So CBP is led by Gil Kurlikowski and his deputy, Kevin McAllenan. The offices that are highlighted in red here are where you're either going to find the people who are generating the requirements, so those are the offices of Field Operations, Border Patrol, and Air and Marine. The people who are going to design and build the systems to support those requirements in the Office of Information and Technology, and the people who are going to buy the technology in the Office of Technology Innovation and Acquisition. Mark Burkowski is the Assistant Commissioner of OTIA, and he is constantly seeking ways to improve acquisition at CBP, and he continues to invite industry to talk to him about improving CBP's capabilities and their ability to deliver on the mission. Now let's take a look at their IT organization. The Office of Information and Technology, which is led by Charlie Armstrong, his deputy, Phil Lanfried, and Wolf Toombe, the Chief Technology Officer. Now, you're going to notice that most of the offices are highlighted in red here, and that's because you'll find folks working on a lot of different projects across the OIT organization. Every single office here could be a target. Now, most of what CBP is working on is going to be in application development, but don't neglect opportunities for cloud and automation, as legacy applications from years ago have to be cost-controlled and modernized. And the last DHS org chart we'll look at today is TSA. John Pistole still leads this group, but he announced his retirement effective December 31st, and no replacement has yet been nominated. That likely means that his deputy, Melvin Caraway, will be acting administrator in his stead. Stephen Rice is the CIO here, Jill Vaughn is his deputy, and the two of them, together with leaders in the other highlighted offices here, ensure that TSA has the tools they need to execute their mission. So the first DHS program we'll talk about is NPPD's National Cybersecurity and Protection System, otherwise known as Einstein. Now, what Einstein is a suite of programs that are designed to protect the federal.gov domain through information sharing on cyber attacks that have occurred across the government, and running analyses to identify patterns of attack to shut down further intrusions. Now, in FY15, Einstein is going to be looking for anti-malware and network monitoring tools, as well as planning for updates to the visual interface of the system. So vendors who can provide those solutions should reach out to Danny Toller, who very shortly is taking over for Brendan Good.
Next up, we'll look at the Automated Commercial Environment, or ACE investment, which is an effort by CBP to transform their business processes around customs and cargo shipping in the United States. Now, when most of us hear of CBP, we likely think mostly of their work along the border, particularly in the Southwest. But in reality, they have a much broader mission that concerns the customs part of Customs and Border Protection. ACE is a major effort by the Cargo Systems Program Office to use agile development to introduce new functionality into CBP systems. There's an analytics play here as well, since a lot of the data here will help inform business operations on that customs side of the house. Tom Mills is currently the Acting Executive Director of the Cargo Systems Program Office, and Sarah Schroerluck is managing more of the day-to-day development of the program.
And our final DHS program is TSA's IT Infrastructure Program. Now, we usually try and shy away from talking about strict infrastructure investments in these briefings, but we thought there were two things of interest with this one. So first is that TSA is likely going to have some fairly significant buys in servers, network hardware, and firewalls coming up, so keep your eyes open for that. However, it's really the secure mobile computing possibilities here that are really of interest. Think of how broad and how big an organization TSA is. Think of how many agents are stationed at major U.S. airports across the United States. There is a real big mobility play at TSA. And if you can enable secure mobility, I expect people at TSA are going to want to take your call. Now, while Ken Carter doesn't have any DME associated with this investment, keep in mind that program managers are getting better at using operational expenditures to purchase new technology, especially when it enhances their mission.